Have you ever walked into a familiar place and suddenly felt like you no longer belonged there, as if your energy had shifted into a frequency the room could not hold anymore? It is a strange and unsettling moment, almost like stepping into a version of your old life that continues without you. And yet, this is one of the earliest signs that your vibration has changed, that your consciousness has expanded beyond the environments that once felt safe, ordinary, predictable. Something inside you starts whispering that the conversations feel thinner, the noise heavier, the atmosphere duller. You begin noticing what others overlook, sensing emotional undercurrents, feeling the weight of unspoken truths. And the more aware you become, the more foreign these spaces begin to feel. It is not arrogance, it is not rejection. It is the natural friction between an elevated inner state and a place that still vibrates at an older rhythm. This shift often begins quietly. You sit among people you have known for years and suddenly feel invisible, not because they cannot see you, but because they cannot perceive the level of presence you now inhabit. Your mind stays awake, while everyone around you runs on old patterns. What used to entertain you now drains you. What used to comfort you now feels limiting. And the deeper question arises almost by itself. Why do high-vibration people start vanishing from common environments without any dramatic announcement? The answer is not simple, but the feeling is unmistakable. Once your awareness expands, your energy becomes a mirror revealing what others avoid confronting, and this tension silently pushes you toward a different kind of space. Have you ever felt this happening to you? If any part of this resonates, share your experience in the comments, leave a like to help this message reach more people, and check whether you are already subscribed to the channel so you do not miss the next steps of this journey. What you are about to discover may surprise you, and it leads us directly into the deeper layers of this transformation, where the shift becomes undeniable and the path ahead begins to reveal itself. As this inner shift deepens, you begin noticing that your behavior changes in ways you cannot fully explain. It is not that you wake up one day and decide to act differently. Rather, the change happens from the inside out, as if your vibration is silently rewriting your patterns without asking for permission. You speak less, but your silence carries more truth than your old explanations ever did. You feel a subtle pull away from chaos, conflict, and shallow dynamics, not because you are avoiding life, but because your energy simply refuses to stay where authenticity is absent. High vibration states make certain environments feel heavier, almost as if the air itself becomes thicker. You sense fragmentation in conversations, the emotional fog people live inside, the habitual reactions that keep everyone stuck in predictable loops. What surprises you most is not the shift itself, but how natural it feels. You are not trying to be spiritual, enlightened, or superior. You are simply responding to an internal clarity that makes false harmony unbearable. You start questioning why you tolerated so much noise, so many drained interactions, so many repeated cycles that never aligned with your deeper truth. Without noticing, you begin editing your life. You say no more often, not out of rebellion, but because your energy refuses to be compromised. You choose solitude over forced belonging. You choose authenticity over approval. You choose peace over performance. And it is in these subtle choices that people around you begin to feel something they cannot name. They sense a change in your presence, a shift in your attention, a softness mixed with strength that unsettles old dynamics. You are still there physically, but vibrationally, you are already moving to a different level. This creates an invisible distance that others feel even before you fully understand it yourself, pulling you further along a path that continues unfolding with each new layer of awareness. As this invisible distance grows, something else becomes unmistakable. The environments that once felt lively begin to lose their color. It is not that they change, but that you now perceive them without the filters you used to wear. You start noticing how predictable the emotional atmosphere is, how people repeat the same stories, the same frustrations, the same identities they have outgrown but still cling to. What once felt like connection now feels like routine. What once seemed normal now feels hollow. You no longer find nourishment in the same conversations, and even moments of laughter carry a subtle emptiness underneath, as if everyone is performing roles they learned long ago. This discovery is quiet, but powerful. You walk through familiar spaces and feel the energy before you even enter the room. Your sensitivity sharpens, and you can sense who is restless, who is hiding pain, who is projecting their fears outward. Not because you judge them, but because your awareness has expanded to a point where emotional truth becomes visible. You see the tension behind the smiles, the exhaustion behind the noise, the loneliness behind the constant need for distraction, and the more you see, the less you can pretend you do not. This clarity does not isolate you. It awakens you. It makes you realize how much of your life was shaped by environments that no longer support the person you are becoming. You begin to outgrow conversations that stay on the surface, spaces built on habit instead of meaning, relationships anchored in who you used to be. Your vibration starts seeking something else, something more aligned, something that does not force you to shrink or dim yourself just to fit in. And this inner search becomes a quiet turning point. You feel yourself drifting away, not because you choose to leave, but because your energy no longer attaches to what once held you. The separation starts subtly, almost imperceptibly, preparing you for the deeper break that begins to unfold beneath the surface, long before any visible change happens in your external world. There comes a moment when the internal shift becomes undeniable, even if nothing has changed on the surface. You show up in the same environments, sit among the same people, follow the same routines, yet everything feels, strangely, distant, as if you are watching your old life from the outside. This quiet shock is not dramatic, it is profound. You begin realizing that your presence no longer blends into the collective rhythm around you. While others continue reacting from habit, you move with awareness. While they seek validation, you seek alignment, and this contrast creates a subtle, energetic friction that grows stronger each time you enter spaces that no longer resonate with who you are becoming. People notice it before they understand it. They sense that something is different in the way you speak, the way you listen, the way you no longer participate in patterns that used to define the group. You stop feeding conversations rooted in negativity or competition. You stop absorbing emotions that do not belong to you. Your silence becomes clearer, your boundaries firmer, your energy more defined. And this new clarity disrupts old dynamics, not because you intend to disrupt them, but because your vibration no longer matches the frequency of those spaces. High-vibration people naturally shift the atmosphere around them, and when an environment is not ready for that shift, it responds with discomfort, confusion, or even distance. This is why those on elevated paths often begin disappearing from common environments. It is not abandonment, it is energetic incompatibility slowly revealing itself. You are not rejecting anyone, you are simply learning to stop rejecting yourself in order to remain where you no longer fit. And as this realization settles in, the path ahead begins to open gently, urging you to honor the truth you can no longer ignore. If this resonates with your own experience, share your thoughts in the comments and tell me how you have felt this shift unfolding inside you. Your perspective may help someone who is quietly going through the same awakening and searching for words to understand it. As your awareness expands, you begin sensing a deeper truth hidden beneath the slow. Drift away from familiar spaces. The energy you carry no longer aligns with the emotional patterns of those around you. It is not personal. It is not dramatic. It is simply the natural result of vibrational incompatibility. You start noticing how certain interactions leave you feeling drained rather than connected, as if the exchange takes more from you than it gives. Conversations that once felt engaging now seem repetitive, looping through the same unresolved fears and the same unexamined beliefs. You feel the heaviness of environments built on comparison, tension, and unspoken frustration, and your energy instinctively withdraws. It is as though your inner frequency refuses to participate in cycles that keep people stuck. This shift happens quietly. You may sit in a room full of people and feel your mind drifting towards silence, reflection, clarity. While others react impulsively, you observe. While they cling to old identities, you release what no longer feels true. The more your vibration rises, the more you tune into subtleties that used to pass unnoticed. You sense when someone is speaking from their wounds instead of their wisdom. You feel when the atmosphere carries unresolved conflict. You read the emotional temperature of a room before a single word is spoken. And once you see these layers clearly, returning to old forms of interaction becomes nearly impossible. What makes this phase particularly challenging is that nothing external needs to collapse for you to realize you have outgrown a place. The shift happens inside you, reshaping the way you perceive everything around you. You distance yourself not out of superiority, but out of self-preservation. You are not avoiding people. You are avoiding the version of yourself that you had to become in order to stay in environments that could not meet you where you truly are. This quiet detachment marks a turning point, preparing you for the next stage of transformation, where inner alignment becomes stronger than the pull of old attachments, gently guiding you towards spaces that can sustain the frequency you are learning to hold. As this inner detachment strengthens, you begin noticing a subtle but undeniable threshold forming between who you were and who you are becoming. It does not announce itself with conflict or dramatic endings. It appears quietly, like a soft boundary your soul erects to protect what is awakening inside you. The more your consciousness expands, the more you feel the tension between your elevated inner world and the environments that remain anchored in old patterns. You sense that your presence no longer blends into the collective rhythm, not because you are pulling away, but because you are being pulled forward by something deeper. Your intuition sharpens, guiding you gently but firmly away from the noise that once shaped your identity. This stage is often misunderstood, even by you. You may wonder why you have less tolerance for superficial conversations, why your body feels heavier in chaotic spaces, why your mind instinctively seeks silence rather than stimulation. It is not withdrawal. It is recalibration. Your vibration becomes more selective about what it engages with, more protective of the clarity it is cultivating. You notice how quickly you absorb the emotional states of others, how easily their unresolved wounds can entangle with your energy, and how necessary it becomes to guard your inner space. What once felt harmless now feels intrusive. What once felt familiar now feels misaligned. And as this awareness deepens, relationships begin shifting in subtle ways. You speak differently, listen differently, respond differently. You no longer react from habit, and this alone disrupts old dynamics. People may sense the change without understanding its source, feeling as though you are slipping into a world they cannot enter. But the truth is simpler. Your consciousness is moving faster than the environment around you. You are stepping into a layer of reality where your inner state becomes more important than external expectations, where authenticity feels more natural than belonging, and where the path forward begins shaping itself long before you consciously choose it. As this transformation becomes more visible, a new pattern begins to emerge, the growing desire to step back from environments that once seemed harmless. It is not isolation born from pain or disappointment. It is a deliberate choice shaped by clarity. You start noticing how much energy it costs to remain in spaces where you must compress your thoughts, filter your feelings, or mute your intuition. The contrast becomes too sharp to ignore. When your vibration rises, your inner world grows more refined, more sensitive, more attuned to the subtleties of emotional and energetic exchange. And in this heightened awareness, you realize that staying in certain environments requires shrinking yourself into an older version of who you used to be. This realization is not dramatic. It unfolds slowly, like an inner knowing that becomes harder to override. You recognize that you cannot heal, grow, or evolve in places where your presence is constantly misunderstood. You cannot expand in environments that reward conformity rather than authenticity. So you start choosing distance, not out of rejection, but out of alignment. Solitude becomes restorative rather than lonely. Silence becomes grounding rather than empty. You find peace in being with yourself because your inner landscape is no longer a place you fear exploring. It becomes a sanctuary, where your vibration can reset, where your clarity can sharpen, where your intuition can breathe. Others may interpret this shift as withdrawal, but it is actually a movement toward preservation. When your energy elevates, your boundaries become less negotiable. You no longer tolerate emotional chaos disguised as connection or superficial closeness that drains rather than nourishes. The more you honor this truth, the more you notice that stepping away is not a loss. It is protection. It is wisdom. It is the natural consequence of becoming someone who no longer fits into the patterns that once defined your world. If you have ever felt this need to retreat in order to protect your energy, share your experience in the comments. Your voice may help someone who is quietly navigating the same transition and searching for clarity within their own awakening. As you continue, withdrawing from environments that no longer resonate, a deeper truth begins revealing itself. The distance you feel is not caused by separation, but by evolution. What once felt like a familiar world now appears through a different lens, one shaped by heightened perception and emotional clarity. You begin noticing how people cling to narratives that no longer make sense to you, how they defend patterns that conflict with your new awareness, how they resist changes you can no longer avoid. This awareness does not make you dismissive. It makes you compassionate. You understand that everyone evolves at their own pace, yet you also recognize that remaining in misaligned spaces slows your own growth. Your vibration simply refuses to follow rhythms that are no longer aligned with your inner truth. During this phase, you start understanding why high-vibration individuals often drift away without explanation. It is not because they are unwilling to engage. It is because their energy can no longer anchor itself in places built on emotional stagnation. You feel the subtle resistance in the atmosphere, the invisible pushback whenever authenticity disrupts old dynamics. You sense the unspoken discomfort that arises when your presence reflects what others avoid within themselves. And as your sensitivity heightens, it becomes impossible to ignore these undercurrents. What feels natural to you may feel uncomfortable to others, not because you are doing anything wrong, but because your vibration exposes tension they are not ready to face. This creates a quiet turning point. You realize that the more you grow, the more you must protect the integrity of that growth. You start choosing environments where awareness flows freely, where you do not need to shrink your intuition, where your emotional clarity is not treated as an inconvenience. You notice that your energy expands in silence, in connection with nature, in conversations rooted in presence rather than performance. And, with each passing day, you feel yourself aligning more deeply with the person you are becoming, guided by a pull that feels both mysterious and inevitable, setting the stage for an even more revealing transformation that unfolds next. As this inner journey unfolds, you begin to witness how deeply the shift affects your sense of identity. It is not just environments you outgrow, it is versions of yourself that no longer feel authentic. You realize that much of who you believed you were was shaped by the expectations, energies, and emotional climates of the spaces you once inhabited. When your vibration rises, these inherited identities start dissolving. You no longer feel the need to play the roles that once kept you accepted, understood, or predictable. Your priorities shift from belonging to becoming, from approval to alignment, from external validation to inner coherence. And this quiet redefinition transforms the way you relate to yourself and to others. Relationships start reflecting this transformation as well. Some people feel closer because they resonate with your new clarity, while others seem to drift as if the energetic thread connecting you has thinned. You feel more attuned to authenticity and less tolerant of emotional patterns that rely on blame, projection, or avoidance. You sense when conversations come from truth and when they come from fear. This heightened perception changes the dynamic of every interaction. You no longer respond automatically. You pause. You breathe. You choose. The old reactive identity collapses, making space for a presence that is more grounded, more aware, more aligned. This inner reconstruction is both liberating and disorienting. You shed layers of conditioning that once shaped your identity, and in their absence you discover a deeper self emerging. It is quieter but stronger, softer but clearer, detached but deeply connected to something larger than the personal narratives that once defined you. And as this identity shift settles into your daily life, you begin to understand why high-vibration people naturally diverge from environments that no longer match their frequency, preparing you for the final stage of this transformation, where the path ahead becomes unmistakably illuminated. As the path becomes clearer, you start realizing that disappearing from common environments is not an act of separation, but an act of alignment. You are not moving away from the world. You are moving toward the spaces that can sustain the person you are becoming. The more your vibration rises, the more your life restructures itself around truth rather than habit. You feel drawn to environments where your inner state is not a burden, but an invitation, where presence is understood, where silence is respected, where growth is not feared but welcomed. This shift does not happen overnight. It unfolds like a gentle rearrangement of your reality, guiding you toward people who speak from awareness, toward experiences that expand rather than contract, toward versions of yourself that feel more real than anything you have embodied before. This transition often begins subtly. Your energy gravitates naturally toward what nourishes it, leaving behind what cannot hold its evolving frequency. You choose interactions that feel meaningful, environments that feel alive, rhythms that align with your inner clarity. You notice how your body relaxes in places that match your vibration, how your intuition strengthens when it is no longer fighting against emotional noise, how your sense of self becomes sharper when you are not forced to shrink to be understood. And as this new landscape forms around you, something inside settles, not because the journey ends, but because the direction becomes unmistakable. You are not disappearing, you are emerging. Your path continues from here, shaped by every layer of awareness you have uncovered. And if this journey has resonated with you, if something in these words feels like a mirror to your own awakening, consider staying connected. Subscribe to the channel so you can continue walking this path with content that supports your growth. Leave a comment with the phrase, "This message was for me," to mark your presence in this process and to signal that you reached this point with full awareness. If the connection we built here feels meaningful, a like on this video helps sustain it and keeps this message reaching others who may need it. And if you feel called to continue, there is another video waiting for you that deepens this exploration. It is right here beside this one, ready for the next step of your evolution.